This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 334 for Wednesday, September 18th, 2019. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me this week is Megan Townsend. You can find her at Megan Townsend on all the social media that matters. Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I can't pronounce social media, but that's okay. We all consume too much of it anyway. I'm not saying don't follow Megan on social media. I'm saying follow Megan on social media, but maybe don't consume as much social media as I do.
No, don't eat it.
No.
When I'm thinking consume. I'm sorry. I'm going to be making so many bad jokes today.
Hey, look, you know what? The bad jokes and the puns, that's kind of how we roll.
That's kind of how we roll.
I know I try not to do this, but I fell victim to this last night, and that is I could not sleep, and I ended up watching some stuff on Instagram. And I was not looking for anything in particular. I was just letting Instagram serve me what it thinks I wanted to see. And it was quite interesting. There were architecture photos, there were some videos about travel and all this kind of stuff. And I find as much as I hate to admit it, I can lose an hour on Instagram just surfing. And it's not like I'm like putting bad content in my face. I'm not reading the news and getting depressed. I'm not, looking at other people's amazing vacations and feeling jealous. And it's none of that. It's just, art and fun, cartoons and some really beautiful illustrations. But next thing I know, an hour has passed, and it's like I didn't necessarily need to be there for an hour. I just was getting a little stir crazy and had to get up and stretch, get a glass of water, all that kind of stuff after being in bed for an hour and not falling asleep. I try not to be on my phone past 11 or so. Do you have any kind of rules like that? I'm curious.
I do. I have the screen time feature on my phone. So it actually lets me know when to go to bed. It lets me know how long I've spent on something. It'll give me a reminder. It's like, hey, you've been on Instagram for an hour already.
Oh, okay, cool.
Which is actually pretty neat. It'll tell me, you can set timers for yourself or how long you actually, if you don't want to spend too much time on something, you can actually set a limit for yourself on how long you actually.
Cool.
Yeah, it's it's parental restrictions, but for your own self. You're basically being your own parent.
Being your own parent, nice, yeah.
At that point.
The only thing that I have is I have, my phone will be silent automatically every day between 11 p.m. and I think 7 a.m. Now, I'm up early, so I'm usually awake at that point anyway. But so and I find that helps tremendously. Just because the devices around me are not dinging, I am more likely to not pick them up in the first place. Whereas, if my phone, even if my phone is lighting up, even if the notifications are coming in for social media and different things. And it is different because social media is a big part of what I do in terms of my own communities and things that I manage. And there's a lot of different time zones. And sometimes it's beneficial to at least see what's going on. I don't always act.
Yeah.
If there's a bunch of, let's say, for example, to bring it back to the Citadel Cafe, lots of really cool conversations going on in the Discord. And I see those notifications come up on my phone because it's my Discord, and I don't feel responsible turning them off. If I have to leave them on so I can kind of know what's going on. And they don't always I don't think they make necessarily a noise. I think maybe a DM or if someone replies directly at me, it'll give me a ding. But most of the time, the community is large enough and there's enough mods in there that it's not a big deal. But I'll look at it. I won't necessarily go in and engage. I'll just look and say, okay, cool. People are having a fun conversation.
Yeah.
Now, on the reverse, if it's there's someone new, then I really feel like it's nice for me to go in and welcome them to the chat, thank them for supporting me on Patreon or which at whatever venue they've decided to come in. Because sometimes it's Twitch, and so it's always nice. I always try to say thank you as soon as possible, and
which is good.
yeah, and I find that helps people feel like they are actually engaging and helping an individual do their thing as opposed to just like putting their name into a hat. Like once you're like when you're in a big situation, like I'll use my other podcast, The Spawn Chunks, as an example. Uh, we've got like 100 and something people in that Discord. And so when you're joining a Discord for a couple of bucks and one of the hosts of the podcast emails you as soon as they see that notification, we don't always get a reply to those emails, but it's nice, I think, on the receiving end for people to say, oh, wow, okay. So they noticed that I showed up. And
Yeah, I mean,
everybody,
I would definitely appreciate that as
yeah,
a content consumer.
yeah.
Be like, oh, because right now I kind of feel like if it doesn't feel automated, like I did that with the Rooster Teeth, like when I signed up for
Hmm.
their subscription service, which I've canceled for now, but we'll probably sign up again when Ruby comes back on. But right now it was like a pretty automated message. It's like, thanks for signing up for your thing, and it didn't feel very personal. It's just like, oh, this is just another
Hmm.
transaction email, kind of. But yeah, if like you were to send an email directly and be like, hey, thanks for the support, as a content consumer, I would definitely feel very welcomed and very visible, as opposed to just being like another fan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I'll confess that it is a the information that I need to send people is a copy paste. Like, the welcome to.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, the hello and stuff is written by me, but like the you'll find information about your level of support in this chat room and this link, and like so that's all copy pasted from a note file because I don't want to type that out every time. Um,
no, naturally,
yeah,
yeah, no, of
but
course.
I
But I
always
mean, the
like
fact
I
that you
say,
take the time to like
you
do
know
something personalized
yeah, like hi David or hi
is
Sarah,
nice.
looking forward to having you part of the
Yeah.
community, like something like that. And then on top of that, because even if the email on Patreon is formal, I can still tag them in Discord and do something personal. Like I can't remember. I think it was maybe in our Discord in my personal one for the Citadel Cafe and my personal Patreon, Skull Daisy Gimp just has a really fun username. So
That is
like
a really funny
yeah.
username, actually. That's cool.
So and it's become kind of a meme, and I don't know whether I started it or whether he had that idea coming in, but when he replies to stuff, instead of giving a thumbs up and instead of giving like a reply, if it's not like he doesn't necessarily have to add to the conversation, but he wants to let the other person know that he's read their message. He just puts a little
Hmm.
daisy emote underneath everything now, which I think is great because it's. I mean, a skull would also make sense, but at the same time, a skull in a chat room kind of has a different connotation. But
Yeah,
people don't use the daisy for anything, right? So
yeah,
and then Elkhorn now has started to do the same thing, and he takes the stag, the picture of the deer, and so Elkhorn, when Elkhorn has read a message, he puts a little stag underneath everything. Um,
that's cute. As everyone's like choosing like their own little symbol to be
yeah,
like, yep, read it, but like don't have anything to reply to, but like I've acknowledged this.
yeah,
That's cute. I like that.
and so when Skull Daisy came in, I was like, "Hey, what up?" And I instead of saying Skull Daisy, I did like skull emoji, daisy emoji, and I left the gimp out because there was no gimp type, emoji. Uh,
Yeah.
and so I sent that out, and he thought it was hilarious, and it just kind of snowballed. And so now everybody's kind of like taking it upon themselves to do that kind of stuff. And so
That's cute. I
yeah,
like that.
so that was pretty fun. Um, but yeah, so stuff like that is like I try to engage as best I can. So it does sometimes lead to being on social media a little bit later than normal because time zones. And, people
Mm,
in California, it's like, 8 p.m. and they're on social media and they're doing their normal evening. And I'm like, it's midnight, like, And so
yeah.
sometimes when those dings come through when I'm awake, I'm just like, I should really just take the 10 minutes and reply to this person that just supported me or supported the podcast or, has a question. That sort of stuff is lot easier. I'm
Which
notoriously
but which is good though.
I'm notoriously bad for getting back to people on Twitter. I don't find I use Twitter as I used to. I don't read Twitter. I broadcast on it.
Mm,
Like I use it to inform people about what's going on with me. Whereas I will absolutely be reading and engaging and keeping up with people on Instagram. Like it's weird. That's Twitter used to be like that for me, and then it just got too noisy. And
yeah.
for whatever reason, I find that Instagram, for the most part, is more positive people are usually sharing the more fun,
Yeah.
positive things. It can also go the other way, but I guess it depends on who you're following and what you're using the social media platform for. I also could use a couple hours of just culling my Twitter follows and just like bailing on a bunch of people that are
Oh.
just,
Mm.
I follow them because they were interviews or it was business related. And it's just like they're just adding to the noise. And I'm sure that if I culled things down into some better lists and removed a lot of people that I follow, that it's not like they're bad people. I just don't necessarily need their addition to my feed. And therefore I'd
Yes,
get
I agree.
more of what I want, in my feed.
I agree.
Yeah.
I need to do the same thing. I have a lot of politics on my Twitter, which kind of happened by accident.
Well, and I do
But
as well, but I need that because we've got a federal election coming up in
yeah.
October, and so I'm trying to keep on top of things. That reminds me, I had one pick already this week, but I've got a second pick to bring up later on in the show, and it's a podcast to recommend for people. Um,
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, but so lately, the last little while, because I've been so busy with stuff, I haven't been watching a whole lot. I have been streaming an awful lot on Twitch, and I've been having a lot of fun. And there's a lot of overlap between the community on the Citadel Cafe, my Discord, and the Twitch chat as well. And so I wanted to give a shout out to everybody there that's been coming out and hanging out and watching me play some Minecraft on Twitch. I am planning on doing some more art streams. I just ran into some technical difficulties that have kind of set me behind. But during the month of September until September 24th, it is known as Subtember on Twitch. And so subscriptions are 50% off. The streamer still gets all the same benefits. So it's less money for Twitch and just the same amount of money for the streamer. Also, a bonus of 10% extra bits, which is cheering on Twitch, and those get sent to the streamer as well. So if you cheer 100 bits or more, then the streamer will get 110, and that extra 10% is actually sponsored by Subway, the restaurant chain. And so
Oh.
Subway and September are all kind of like um,
Ah,
one
I
big
see, I
event.
see.
Um,
I was thinking subscribers, September.
Yeah, well,
That's what I
it's
was
kind of
thinking of,
it's
but
both, right? Like
Subway.
it all kind of fits together.
Hey.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring it up is because I wanted to try and stream more in September anyway. But there's been a number of people that have supported me for like 12 months or more, and so I wanted to try and
Hmm.
push this out there because it's a way for them to continue to support if they want to, but save some money, like save half price on the tier 1
Yeah.
sub. And I really appreciate that. And also, that's another way for people to get into the Discord. So if you're not a Patreon person, if you're not, you don't want to do the podcasty thing, then if you look at Twitch, if that's where you like to support people, because sometimes people already have like Amazon Prime or they've already got bits that are invested and they just like to distribute those bits over the course of different creators over the course of the month, then one, you'll be helping out your creators a little bit extra in September until the 24th. But also with me, it's a way to get into the Discord. So once you are either a tier 1, a gifted sub, or a Amazon Prime sub, then you will have access to the Discord via linking your Twitch and your Discord accounts. So um, if that's at all something that people have questions about, feel free to drop me a line. It's thecitadelcafe@gmail.com, or you can find my email or social media in various different places online. JoelDuggan.com is another great way. And so I can set you straight if you have any questions. Usually, if you're in the chat room during a stream and you have those kind of questions, one of my mods will jump in. Paranor or Pineapple Princess or Cosmic Dancer will usually chime in and say like, "Oh, here's a link that explains like how to link Discord and get into the chat and all that kind of
Right.
stuff." So which is great because then you've got people that are in both, like they'll be in the Twitch chat and in the Discord, and they can help you get from one to the other, which is
Yeah.
great. But I've been really
You have a
enjoying.
great little community. Sorry,
Oh,
I just
thanks.
gotta like the community is so just good. Like the Citadel Cafe community, you just dropped a lot of names. I'm just like, no, like every time you mention those people, they're always just like super nice and very helpful. I'm more of a lurker. I'm terrible for like getting in there. I've always been that way in any chat room in any
Mm.
chat world. I've always just kind of been a lurker. I'll chime in every once in a while, and then I'm radio silent for probably like 3 months. But I do lurk, and everyone is just so nice, and they're so sweet, and just great little community. You just
Yeah.
make me real
No,
happy.
I agree, and thank you. It's a nice feeling to have when you've got such a cool community hanging
Yeah.
around. And especially like, and that happens a lot on the Twitch stream. Like I'll have like, 16 or 20 viewers, but really only 10 are chatting. So like, that there are people there that are just there to watch. They've got it on in a second monitor, or they're doing the dishes, like whatever they're doing, they've got it on in the background. So it's a pretty
Yeah.
chill experience. And the reason why I bring this all up, because you're like, Joel, why are you bringing this up on the Citadel Cafe? Is because the conversations that we've been having on Twitch lately with the chat room have been outside of just Minecraft. It's
Mm.
been about like No Man's Sky, World of Warcraft, about game design in general, about building my new gaming PC. Because the tasks that I'm doing right now for this fortress farm that I'm building in Minecraft, there's a lot of just like repetition, like digging out
Yeah.
or slabbing or laying down a bunch of the same thing over and over again. So it's a fun way to chat with the chat room because I'm able to look up quite a bit, outside of like not falling in lava. Like I've got a fairly simple task. I'm not necessarily concentrating a lot on what's happening on screen, so I can engage a lot more with the chat room. Still something I'm trying to get better at. So it's been a lot of fun because I can talk with people about all kinds of stuff. We've been talking about Minecon is coming up in 2 weeks, so the new announcements from Minecraft and all the different games that are coming out from Mojang. So all that kind of stuff is pretty cool, and so I'm really looking forward to having more discussions like that on Twitch,
Yeah.
which is super cool. Anyway, on my screen, when I have had time to watch something, I took Lou's recommendation and took advantage of having 30 days free Amazon Prime with a trial and started watching The Boys. And have you heard about this? Have you watched any of this?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
So I won't get too deep into it because Lou covered all of the main points when he reviewed it last month on the Citadel Cafe, and I agree with him. I like it. I can't say it's something I'm going to watch all the time, but
Mm.
it's very well done. Like it is high budget, high bar, well written, well acted. The concept is new. The um, the way that they kind of handle everything, it's not like roll your eyes CW superhero show. Like there's
Right.
twists and turns and things that are in there that I really did not expect. And so I appreciate all of that. It's dark though. Like it is, and
Mm.
I don't necessarily mean just dark like violent, which it is, and it's gross. Like it just don't eat dinner while watching this show. It's not
Yeah.
no, it's not subtle in any way, shape, or form. But it's one of those shows where you don't or can't like anyone.
Really
Yeah, not.
interesting.
I shouldn't. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that. Not anyone, but there's a huge portion of the cast and the characters where you, even if you're like, they're the underdog, they're clearly supposed to be the person that I'm quote unquote rooting for or identifying
Mm.
with this one thing that they did. And you're just like, well, that was evil. So
Yeah.
I can't defend them because, well, they did that, and so this is something that I find uh, rather disheartening. It is not the escape that I'm looking for right now. So I've got it bookmarked. I'm still going to watch more of it. I just have to be in the right mood. It's the kind of thing where, like, once I've started an episode, I enjoy it. I just have a hard time pressing play,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean.
It's just that everybody, all the main heroes in it are despicable. Like it's what would happen
Mm.
if commercialism and superheroes got together in our world of marketing and social media and hype and like all the
Right.
terrible decisions and things that would happen if like for you and I are big superhero fans. Like we
Yeah.
comics and superhero movies and stuff like that. Like just take any of those superheroes that have those powers, heroes, not villains, but heroes, and give them to like the average person today, like the average faulted person today. They're
Mm.
not going to be a hero.
No.
Like chances are that there's going to be a lot of gray area. There's going to be a lot of like, what can I get out of this? Like and so this show takes all of that to the extreme. Like
Yeah,
Like, what if you
I've
were,
heard this.
like a superhero that had essentially like Superman like powers, but you've been at the top of it for 7 or 8 years, and you're just as corrupt, and not that you do, not that you're not saving people. It's just that you just enjoy the limelight. You want the selfies. Like, you're not a good person behind it all. And it's
Yeah.
like, so when it's different, compared it to Deadpool, because Deadpool is like an anti-hero, and
Yes.
you still like Deadpool. He still kills people. Like, he does immoral things, but you still like him because he's doing them for the right reasons, and it's
He's
got,
he's he's chaotic good.
yeah, exactly. In
If
this,
we're gonna go with the D&D
yeah,
like convention,
yeah,
yeah.
and this show is, the way that I'm sort of reading it is that the heroes in it are not the heroes. They're the villains. Like, it's just, they're all super villains. They just, no one knows it yet. Because that's kind of where it all
Hmm.
seems to go. And even the ones that are not like evil still have a lot of selfish gray, kind of like self-absorbed sort of stuff to it.
Right.
Um, and a lot of the stuff is kind of like ripped from the headlines and current events and things like that. And it's all the kind of stuff that I don't necessarily want to think about when I want to sit down and watch a fantasy show. Like, it's one of the appeals of watching something like Lord of the Rings is that there's all the world problems that we have right now. Most of them don't exist in Lord of the Rings. Like, there
Yeah.
are other things to deal with, Balrogs and trolls, and like, more immediate concerns than like social statures, and like
Yeah.
income disparity. Like, just none of that really matters, in the Lord of the Rings, because they're
Hmm.
trying to save the world from oblivion. Like, there's higher priorities. And so with these kind of shows, it's it's this problem I have with, like, it's just taking all this stuff and it's coming up with this really cool concept, but then taking all of existing 2019 problems and injecting it into this concept. Like, no, I don't want that. And to move away from the
It's just
boys, I have this
too much
problem.
at that point, I'd
Yeah,
say.
I have this problem with Another Life on Netflix, which is a dark horror sci-fi film or a series. Obviously, The Boys on Amazon. Carnival Row is very good, and I really enjoy it. But it's dark, dirty, industrial age serial killer fantasy. Like, it's not.
Mm,
It's still enough of the modern world and racism and classism and all the different problems that we have put into a very interesting world that they've built immaculately, and they don't beat you over the head with. So there's a lot of really cool questions that you have, but ultimately it's a lot of the same social issues that we're experiencing today in politics and, immigrant relations and like all this kind of stuff. It's like,
yeah.
I want something that's just like, where's my like He-Man or Thundercats, or like, just give me something that is
Something light.
so detached from reality. Like, I was really sad when I finished The Dark Crystal, because of course that I really enjoyed, and it was dark fantasy, but it had nothing to do with like modern day.
Humans.
Yeah, like, it was
There's no
all,
humans to be seen.
yeah, like all of those issues were elsewhere, right? So that's,
I finished that show, by the way. I loved it. It
oh,
was so,
nice.
so good. I don't
Yes.
want to get into it too much, but because like that's not what our show's about today.
Yeah.
But it was like perfect. It was good. And
Really
then
enjoyed
immediately
it.
afterwards, Beth and I watched the movie.
Had you seen the movie
So
before or not? I'm
I
curious.
had, yes, yes, I
Okay.
had, I had. It'd been a while, so it was nice going from like the pre-story
Mm-hmm.
to going to the movie. Sorry, it was a random yawn.
Yeah, so I had the opposite recommendation for Johnny, my co-host on the Spawn Chunks. He hadn't seen the original film. He's just
Okay.
a little bit younger, and so he missed it at that cutoff, in terms of like age appropriate, sort of like when it first came out,
Mm,
and just had never really crossed his radar. So I told him, I said, look, if you've got the patience, I would go watch the film first. Just know that it was made in like 82, and then go forward, because the series spoils some of the stuff in the movies or in the film.
mm.
And the film loses a little bit of the kind of cool surprises if you watch the series first. So he watched the film, and now he's quite curious to go back and watch the series. And so he really enjoyed the film. He was like, "Yeah, no, this
Oh, that's
this is
good.
like surprised that he's like, my 14-year-old self would have been all over this had it been on my radar back when it came out." And I was like, "Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
precisely why I'm always glad that people like it because it can be kind of like on the fence with people. Some people hate it, some people really like it, and I don't find there's anybody
It's
that's kind of in
definitely
between.
I definitely find it very unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I think I'm always I feel like I'm always just an in between individual anyway. Like I never unless I outright absolutely fucking hate something, then I will say so. But if I don't love it, I usually like something about it. I definitely think the darker like I definitely like it. It definitely sits in this weird uncomfortable zone for me though, where I find I have a hard time watching it.
Mm.
I find it very slow, so I have to take frequent breaks when
It's
watching
very
it.
slow. Yeah.
But that was also just the pacing of movies back then.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
and they also couldn't do anything too quickly because of just technology and
no,
like the puppets. Like you can't if you move the puppets too quickly back then you really break the illusion, right? Like everything was more
yeah,
slow and subtle, and so that kind of had to be where things
yeah.
go. But
And back then, I read somewhere that they needed four people to operate the Gelfling puppets, whereas in the show, the TV show, like the series, they only need two. So they've already upgraded the puppets by then, just because
hmm
of newer technologies and things. And um, so yeah, I definitely need to take frequent breaks with it. It definitely is very unsettling to watch, but I do enjoy it. I enjoy the concept of it is fantastic. I think
mm,
I always really enjoyed that absolutely no human, just pure fantasy element to it.
yeah, yeah, no, and the production design really sold it on the series for me too. Like it's just really pretty. Like it really you
Mm,
don't think about it when you're watching it. I mean, as an artist, I noticed a couple of things, but like as a viewer, when I can put my viewer hat on, I was in the world of Thra. I wasn't thinking about
yeah.
what television set I was on or how people were fitting inside different things. Like it was, you really were just kind of transported to this
Yeah.
story. Like I think they did a really good
Yes.
job with that. So, speaking of
100%.
speaking of stories, what have you been consuming the last little while?
Well, aside from that, recently I haven't been watching a lot of shows, or a lot of movies or anything. I just haven't found anything on my radar, and I'm trying to see if I can borrow my mom's Amazon Prime so I can watch Carnival Row. But to answer your question, my boyfriend and I recently played through um, a game called Man of Medan. And it's like an anthology series. So to backtrack a little bit, the same company, Super Big Pictures, I think it is, or if yeah, I think it's Super Big Pictures who's the
Super Massive Games, I think is the
Super Massive Games. That's what it is. I'm thinking more from a movie standpoint. I should know this. Um, they made a game a couple years ago called Until Dawn, which I'm sure a lot of people are very familiar with. It's like a horror thriller sort of game, um, where you're playing as various teenagers kind of stuck up on a snowy mountain, and at first they have this whole issue of they're there a year after the anniversary of the death of two of their friends, two twin sisters. They ran into a snowstorm, were never seen from again. And it's been a year later, so their older brother Josh has kind of invited all his friends over, to kind of have like a one last bash sort of thing. Um, and then, like, do you care about spoilers for this at all?
no,
Are you
not
ever
for
gonna?
not not
No,
not for this game for me personally because this is not my type of game. But we can just give a spoiler
right?
warning for anybody in the audience that is currently playing
Yeah, sure.
or might play
Quick.
later. So just tune in later, come
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the story is basically you find out that one of the sisters had a very, very massive crush on one of the boys in their group, and everyone else kind of knew about it. So set up this whole embarrassing situation for her to kind of tease her a little bit about it. So she was embarrassed and ran out, and then her sister ran after her, and they end up falling off a cliff. And it's very grisly. Like it's a very grisly game. Um, you can see like they both like smack their head off of a rock, and like they dead. They're
Whoa.
dead essentially. So but that is their bodies were never found, so that's like they could still be alive, who knows, but like it's been a year, so they're most likely just not around anymore. So their brother kind of figured out what happened and invited all of his friends back and set up this whole elaborate like joke. So he dressed as like a psycho and got like sleeping gas to knock some people out, and you got like pig carcasses and like fake saws, and you find out throughout the like their his parents are like movie moguls. Like his dad's a famous director, so they're very wealthy. They have a huge like mountain lodge that's massive and beautiful, and he's got like a bunch of weird movie props everywhere. So Josh just kind of makes this whole elaborate scheme of like, hey, there's actually a psycho on this mountain, but surprise, it's actually me. And he's a little bit unhinged. I think he's kind of been like stressed out and like just sort of had severe PTSD because of the death of his sisters, and just kind of slowly starts losing it throughout the course of the game. But then there's also this other element where there's someone else on the mountain with them as well, and you come to find out there's actually like these mythical aboriginal creatures called wendigos. And wendigos are typically a spirit of cannibalism. If someone ever resorts to cannibalism on this particular mountain, they basically turn in like a physical manifestation of a wendigo, and they're horrifying and just constantly like ravenous hunters, and they're scary. It's a scary game. When I first watched a playthrough of it, and I really enjoy it. It's definitely very interesting. I think if I had to play through it by myself to start with, I wouldn't have done it. But being with a bunch of people, I think makes me feel a little bit better. I got a couple of friends to play it because I already knew what to expect, so I kind of get a little bit desensitized from it. But the whole point of this game is that it's sort of a choose your own adventure, and I feel like I mentioned it when we talked about Detroit Become Human. Detroit Become Human is like a pure choose your own adventure. You have 15 different ending options based on choices that you make in the first half of the game. Until Dawn is very similar to that. It's touted as a butterfly effect game, not as much of a butterfly effect as Detroit is, because there's still a very linear storyline, but your choices can affect relationships, like different character relationships, who's alive, who's dead. If quick time events can determine if you manage to get to someone in time, if they're dead or alive. If you find certain items that can change someone's fate later, there's a bunch of different things that can change. But the story ultimately is very linear. The ending scene is always the same. The only thing that's different is who's there, depending on how you've played the game and who you've managed to save. So it's interesting. It's definitely not as elaborate in terms of butterfly effect as Detroit was, for sure. But this Supermassive Games developed. It's doing like this Dark Chronicles anthology, which sounds really cool in concept. They're basically releasing a series of like short 1 to 5 hour games that have the same structure as Until Dawn, where you have character dialogue options and you play as different characters and they all have different experiences. But the first one that came out is called Man of Medan, and it started out very promising, and then it just kind of fell flat, which I was really bummed about. The start of this one is you're like a couple soldiers in the middle of World War II. You're in China. It's a combination of tutorial and how to navigate the game. And these two soldiers. You're out drinking. One guy gets his fortune read. It teaches you how to do like a little mini fight game, because you have to fight things later in the game. And then these two soldiers, because drinking's not allowed, apparently, you find out later, they end up getting chucked in the brig. And then one guy ends up getting his head hit. He passes out, and when he wakes up, he finds everyone on the ship that he's on dead. And you find there's like this weird neurotoxin that they're like, it's like a bioweapon that they're loading onto this ship. And then it's like 75 years later, and it's like these group of young adults. They're divers, and they're basically trying to find like lost treasure, or like find lost dives for some sort of research purpose. And they ended up running into this ship, and it starts out like a weird ghost ship story, and then you find out that there's actually no ghosts. It's literally just a weird fear gas thing. So everything is all in their heads. And it just didn't land as well as I was hoping it was going to land. It had some pretty big names in it. Like, have you heard of Sean Ashmore?
The name rings a bell.
For people who don't know, he was in either him, he's twin, either him or his twin brother. I can't. One of the Ashmore twins. Um, one of them was in the made for TV movie Legend of Earthsea, but one of them was also in the X-Men games as Iceman, I think. Um, sorry, X-Men movies. Yeah, he was in one of the X-Men movies as like the Ice Guy. Um, so he's a relatively like his name is familiar to people. He's been in a lot of sci-fi. You've definitely seen him and stuff.
Hmm.
So he's probably the biggest name in this game. His character is the most throwaway character in the whole thing. The way I played it, I got him to escape. So there's a point where they're all in this boat in the middle of the ocean. Pirates come, and he has an option of either staying with the group or escaping to try and get help. We opted because we thought, hey, this seems like a good idea. He's going to go get help. And then he's not in the rest of the game. We didn't see him, and we see him at the very end, and then that's it. It just, there was a lot of, you could tell it just seemed very, very thrown together very quickly. The story just was not as interesting as Until Dawn was, as I'm sure some of the other anthologies are going to. The whole idea, like, if I'm going to play a horror game, I'd like for there to actually be some horror supernatural elements.
Right.
Like the
Not a
idea of having
psychological
it,
thriller game, you know?
yeah, and it was a psychological thriller that presented itself as a supernatural horror. So when it wasn't actually a supernatural horror, but still looked like one, but was not one, it just didn't land nicely. It wasn't nearly as interesting. And once you manage to figure out, oh, this is all pretend, and halfway through there's this character called the Curator, and the idea is he is like a library. He's like a bookkeeper, and he has all these different books, and he's like, all right, here's your story. And the choices you make halfway through or certain points, he checks in with you. He's like, all right, you've been doing some good stuff. Here's some stuff you fucked up. But you know, here's some things. Do you have an idea of what's going on? And you can say, no, you can tell me though. He'll just tell you straight out. Oh, it's all in your head. The whole thing is in your head. And so it just kind of ruins the whole mystery of it all.
Right.
Before the characters can even figure out it's in their heads that it's this neurotoxin, the curator just tells you halfway through. Which I think is kind of cheap. And yeah, it just didn't quite land. The design of it is really nice. There's some really cool elements where during some choices that you make, there's one moment where like you're being pushed into a cabin by one of the pirates, and just the way the camera turns, you can see the curator just through like a window looking in at you because he's almost like watching the story unfold, and he's very obvious because he's dressed in like very formal clothing. He almost looks like he's from like the 40s in like a nice 40s suit. He has
Right.
like a winter jacket and stuff, and everyone else in the story is very modern, like shorts, t-shirts. They're on a boat in the middle of a tropical paradise, and he's like dressed in like a winter Victorian
Hmm.
garb, and he's just kind of this random figure you see for just a second. So you can see him throughout different moments, which is really, really cool, just for a second. So the design of everything is really nice. The way everything looks is really cool. The maps and stuff on the ship that you're on it's very unsettling because it's very closed. Like it really plays with the whole claustrophobia aspect. Usually military ships had very like short and narrow corridors that you would walk down,
Hmm.
right? So you're basically walking through this old World War II military ship. So everything is very close together. Everything is very like tight, and the way the camera is designed, it makes it look like something's following you because you just so the design of everything is really neat. But the story and the characterization just fell flat. There were a couple moments based on choices that Colin, my boyfriend, and I made where people we saw were in one spot and all of a sudden they were in another spot, and then we didn't figure out where someone else was, and it just kind of it had a really, really good buildup of story, and then halfway through it just all fell to pieces, and we're just like, what happened? What went on here? It wasn't able to really figure out its stuff. I think it expected you to go one direction and make all these individual choices, and when you didn't make that choice, they didn't have any scenes that filled in those blanks for you.
Hmm.
So it just seemed really janky and kind of thrown together. So that kind of sucked. The concept is really neat. The next one they have coming out in a couple months is called Little Hope, and it seems like it's more of a supernatural thing. It seems like a small town sort of witch, like Blair Witch vibe thing. So I'll probably take a look at it when eventually, because they're releasing them in segments. Um, but if it's anything like this one, I don't think I'm going to try the rest of them because there's supposed to be six of them. They're releasing six short games over a period of 6 months.
And at
Um,
$40, like it doesn't sound like it's quite worth the
yeah,
experience. Like it sounds like a little
yeah,
bit more of a if they're going to be segments like that and smaller experiences, you kind of expect them to be closer to like $20, in terms of just
yes. Is it so? What so Colin bought it. Is it $40
I'm looking
per segment?
at the Man of Medan and it's $40 right now on Steam.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's worth the $40. I really don't. Um, I say that again, the graphics are pretty all right. The world, like the environments are cool.
And
The models are good.
I could be outside of my
Not
wheelhouse too. Like this could be average pricing for this kind of game. And if you're really into these kind of horror story games, then like maybe this is just like if it's your bag, then that might be worth the $40. But it
yeah.
sounds like this is weaker. I've seen some other stuff out there. Um, I say I have seen it. I don't remember the names right now, but I seem to recall other gamers being very interested in some other horror games that are not this one and they seem to be much higher reviews. They seem to be
Hmm.
enjoying them a lot more. So there might be some other stuff out there in this sort of genre right now. I want to say, is it Possession? I'm probably wrong. I don't want, again, like I don't want to go down a rabbit
Oh,
hole where
yeah,
I
I've
can't
heard
really
of
remember everything.
Possession.
But anyway, yeah, these are not normally my types of games, but I don't like horror films anyway. Like it's just, even Another Life there on Netflix that I mentioned a little while ago, that's a stretch for me. Like I don't really enjoy thriller stuff, horror stuff. I'm more of an
Yeah.
adventure, sci-fi, fantasy sort of dude. So it's
See, we were just kind of in the mood to do something spooky because it was
mm,
like, hey, fall's coming
fall's
up.
coming, Halloween's coming, yeah.
Yeah, we jokingly call September. What's the date today? Today's the 18th.
Mhm.
Today is Halloween, the pre-Halloween, the 18th.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so like we just wanted to, do something a little bit spooky to get us in like the fall mood.
Mm.
Um, and the idea of a World War II ghost ship sounds kind of fun and sounds kind of spooky and creepy, and it's like this seems really neat. It but basically having them like give up the whole charade halfway through the level, because you have the option. You can ask like the curators, like, do you want to know what's going on? And you can say, yeah, sure, tell me, or you can say no thanks. But most people will just say, yeah, sure, go ahead. He'll
Right.
just tell you straight up what it's about. It's like you didn't have any like troubleshooting to do. You didn't have any like because the characters can go through and figure that out for themselves. But he just told us, like
Mm.
he just tells you, and it's like, oh, that's kind of cheap. So then it just makes the rest of the game not seem as fun because you know it's happening. You're like, oh, okay, well, I know this is all in their heads. And there was
Right.
one of the things that a lot of people found very janky was it's pretty much just quick time events. It's a lot of walking around, looking at stuff with quick time events, and that's all it is. And it's just not a very engaging game, which kind of sucks. Again, I want to say like for the work that people put into it, like the modeling and the writing and animation and stuff, like I definitely think people should be paid a fair wage for that. So $40 doesn't seem too bad, but for how well it landed,
Right.
it definitely seems I would not want to pay $40 for that if it's going to be what it is.
Mm.
Like it didn't land well, which
Yeah.
is a problem. I'm hoping the next one is good. Um, I'm hoping the next one is not as expensive. It seemed really interesting because there are hints to it in Man of Medan. So Little Hope does look a lot more spooky. It looks spookier. If you're gonna play it for the spooky aspect, it definitely looks spookier.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of bummed that it didn't land well. That's pretty much the only thing I really engaged with in terms of story, and
Hmm.
just the story just did not work, which seems kind of like a bummer. But
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know. I mean, that could be the entry It could be the entry price, and then other expansions might be more like DLC, and they
Yeah,
could be cheaper. But yeah,
I'm
I would
hoping.
proceed with caution. I think is the
Yeah,
better way to look at it.
yeah, exactly.
Speaking of proceeding with caution, I have been trying to educate myself in terms of current politics that are happening in Canada. And I promise I'm not going to get political because
Hmm.
I don't want to get into any kind of divisive sort of talk. But one thing I do want to recommend, because I know that we do have a number of Canadian listeners, and I was pleasantly surprised. Party Lines. It is a CBC podcast by Rosemary Barton, and I hope I pronounced his name right. It's Ilamin Abdulrahman, I think. He
Okay.
says it so fast on the podcast that I just like, wow, okay, I'm going to need to see that spelled.
Mm,
But they are obviously both political journalists. It's not a show that leans in any direction. They're basically just taking a look at like what the political parties in Canada have to go up against to be successful in their own mission statements coming into the federal election in October. It's short. I've got 2 episodes on my phone right now. They're both 25 minutes long. Comes out every Thursday.
oh,
Uh,
nice. Okay.
very, very well produced. It is not overly, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? It's they're not afraid to laugh. They're not afraid to have a little bit of a flub. It's not so tight that it feels like a evening news broadcast. Like they're people.
Right.
They it's
Right.
they're
Citizens with opinions, essentially.
yeah. And so they'll question stuff. And even if there is like a moment where like a decision made by a political party obviously goes against this particular person's political stance, they don't necessarily dive into any kind of tirade. They just kind of go, huh, yeah. Like, so I don't
Hmm.
understand that, but we're just going to give you the facts and then move on. And so
Right.
it's good in that way. Like they don't paint anything. They give you, here's what happened. Here's a clip, and the clips are short, an audio clip of like a speech or something like that, from like a debate or what have you. And, and they're giving it to you straight. So as far as I can tell, so this combined with a Canada Votes newsletter that I'm getting from CBC every Monday morning, um, also kind of written in the same sort of vein. It's like, here is what happened this week. Like, if you missed
Right.
stuff, here are the important things. The NDP, they were in BC and this happened. And the Conservatives, they were in Quebec and then this happened. And, the Liberals were here. And so, like, they give you kind of like the up to speed, kind of like where things are. The podcast goes into a little bit more depth. And they give you like the explanations. Like, why is this a big thing? Like, I think one of the things that they talked about recently was what are the things that are not being said? Like, what are the candidates avoiding because it's bad? It doesn't sit well with their either their voters or certain demographics. So why are they not answering this question? And they
Right.
go into why they're not answering, and then they debate as to, well, it could be put to bed so easily if they just answered it, but here's why they're probably not going to. And so they
Mm,
really kind of get into all this kind of stuff. And it's not on any one specific party. They use a couple of examples. So they might not give examples from all four parties, but they certainly give examples from at least two when they talk
okay.
about stuff like that. So they make the effort to not put any one particular party under the bus. But in some cases, there's just not an example currently, for that particular topic of
Right.
conversation. Like they might have something to say about the Conservatives and the NDP, but then they don't have a liberal example of the specific topic, so they just kind of don't don't get into it. Anyway,
Right.
it's very well done. I really enjoy both of them. They're both great podcasting personalities. Rosemary Barton, especially, she's a lot of fun. And I say she's a lot of fun about a politics podcast. Like, so they can keep it light, they can keep it entertaining. And that's what I like about it. It's like, I want to listen to it, which means I'm going to get my news, which is important. And
Which is good.
yeah,
That's definitely
so,
really
and
good.
it's not very often I get to plug another podcast on the Citadel Cafe. And so I wanted to give it a shout out, and it's probably going to be short lived because I mean, it's a political primer for every kind of concerned citizen about the upcoming election. So, like, I don't know what happens to this podcast after the election. It may go away. I don't know. Um, but uh,
Yeah.
but
I
either
mean,
way,
is it good for people who are not very politics savvy?
yes.
I like to stay informed, but I'm not very savvy
There's
about
not
like,
a lot of inside baseball. No, it'd
okay,
be
good.
like,
That's good.
they'll explain like, oh, here, why is this important? Well, back in 2005, this happened, and you go, oh, got it, like that. So that's the
Right.
track record.
But
Like,
there's no like
you know,
like legal jargon or anything. There's no
no, no,
like
no, no.
political.
It's more about the face of the race. It's more about like what's going to be important in the upcoming election campaigns. What is going to be
Right.
what is Canada going to be concerned about or should be concerned about, and
Right, right, right.
how are these political parties answering questions like climate change and immigration and balancing the budget and all that kind of stuff. And they even go, I
Right.
think, and I don't quote me on this, but I feel like one of the things that were said was like, one of the things that is usually thrown at a government in power is that you didn't balance the budget. And one of the things
Hmm.
that they stated quite quickly after that was like, no one ever does. So it's like this unending, it's like this carrot on a stick that you just can't get. And so your opponents always throw it in your face. But the next person that gets into office won't be able to balance the budget either because it just never happens.
It never
So
happens.
that's not and shouldn't be, as high a concern for, Canadians as climate change and some of the things that are going to be more impactful in the immediate future.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of stuff was good. Um,
Man, and again, like going back, I know we've been talking about like, environmental things on the
mhm.
show. But like I'm glad they bring that up because that is really important. Like, yeah, like, money is definitely an important thing and balancing a budget is definitely an important thing. But if our environment's not stable and if our economy is not stable, there's no sense if the budget's not going to be balanced because we're not going to be here
Yeah, no,
to be able to
exactly.
balance that budget in the
Yeah,
first place, right? So I think once we get everything balanced and
priorities.
stable,
Yeah,
yeah, prioritize. And if everyone's priority is like, oh, money,
yeah,
then it's just I feel like it's just going to be an ongoing
yeah. And unfortunately,
problem all the time.
a lot of voters end up focusing on money or lack of money.
Well, and then I think that's just what society has kind of taught us to focus on anyway. It's
Yes.
like, oh, if you don't have money, you can't do anything. But it's like, no, no, no. Now we have bigger problems to deal with at this point. Like, we know we're fucked already. I feel like I've dropped so many f bombs in this show. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
We know that like in terms of like I think we're on the tail end of a depression, still in a depression. Economy sucks right now, at least
Hmm.
in Canada. I'm sure in the world for millennials and people who are in sort of any creative fields, it's just going to be garbage anyway for us. And if the only time there's like the 1% are like just housing all the money, so no one. I actually saw a really hilarious. I think I tweeted it on Twitter. I saw a hilarious podcast that someone had been listening to, and it was asking recent college graduates, could you live off of $50,000 a year? And it's like, wow, yeah, I could definitely live off of double my annual income currently.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely could live off of that. But
Yeah.
like it's the podcast is geared towards people who are clearly making six figures a year.
Hmm.
And they're just like, could you do it? It's like, man, if everyone had 50 grand a year to live, we'd be great.
Yeah.
Everything would be just hunky dory.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny depending on what side of the fence, the financial fence you're on, like what sounds like a lot
Right?
and what sounds like a little. Yeah, no,
I know,
yeah.
right?
So, but anyway, I'm sure they're going to get into some of that because there's some things that came out with different platforms this week that I have not yet listened to on the podcast. So I'm curious as to how Party Lines is going to address all that. So, but yeah, check it
Mm-hmm.
out.
I have to
And
give that a listen.
yeah,
It's that they're short and they explain everything that it will definitely be very
yeah, 25
helpful
minutes. I mean,
for
that's a
sure.
short bus ride,
That's
or
nothing.
so that
Yeah.
you can listen to that while you're cooking dinner, doing the dishes, that sort of thing, and or have it on like on speakers so that you can then engage with roommates or significant others in conversation about like what's happening. I think that's really cool. I'm going to be recommending this to
Yeah.
my family as well, just because I really want
Yeah.
people to kind of be informed. But anyway, that brings us into the Internet Minute, which is brought to you by you, dear listener. The Citadel Cafe is listener supported, and I want to give a special thanks out to our new bean counter, Cosmic Dancer. We have a new support level on Patreon, so if you're over there and you want to have a audio credit on the show, then you can support at the bean counter level. and have your name mentioned right here in the Internet Minute. If you are getting value out of the show, consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. It's completely up to you. There's various different levels, Discord access, additional audio, all that kind of stuff. If you're curious about the extra bonus Barista Cut audio episodes, because last episode was episode 333, I made the Barista Cut available to everyone that's a patron. So not just the Barista level, but like all the base level patrons. So if you're looking at that and you're thinking, that'd be kind of cool, I wonder what that's about, check it out because it's available for folks. Every once in a while, I like to throw one out for like the general public as well, so they can kind of see what they might be getting if they become a member. But that's patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Currently at 18 patrons, hoping to make that 20 or more in the next couple of weeks, just because we were up there that summer. And I'd like to get back up. But yeah, that's where we're hanging our hat right now. And I have something fun with all the dark horror and the deep social anxieties of the boys. We're going to talk about Lego in the internet, the Internet Minute.
Yeah.
The Lego Ultimate Collector Edition Imperial Star Wars, Imperial Star Destroyer, is out. It is, or will be out on October 1st. It is the Devastator, which is the Imperial Star Destroyer from Star Wars A New Hope, the iconic opening chase sequence. It is 4,784 pieces, yours for only $849 Canadian, which is almost as much as my rent. Available this October 1st, as I mentioned. It is not a small job. It is 17 inches high on the stand, 43 inches long, so it's nearly 4 feet long, and 26 inches wide. So 2 feet wide at the widest part of the triangle of the Star Destroyer. Buildable scale version of the Rebel Tantive 4, which is the Corellian cruiser that has Princess Leia on it from that opening chase sequence, is also in the kit. So it's a little teeny version, and it kind of gives you just how big, the destroyer actually is in comparison. When you compare this to the UCE Millennium Falcon, which was 7,000 pieces, 7,500 pieces, as a matter of fact, this is only $50 cheaper. So if you really want to spend a long time building, buy the Millennium Falcon because the Star Destroyer is the same price essentially and almost half as many pieces, certainly 40% less. So it looks really cool. Like, it's a super cool thing. I just am so distraught over the price of Lego. Like, I get that it's a license thing, and I get that this is a big set and there's a lot of pieces, but $800 for a Lego set is just cost prohibitive. Like, that's just not.
It is, yeah.
Like,
it really is. Like, that's for collectors only. I feel like that's
Well, I mean, now
a lot.
Ultimate Collector's Edition. I mean, like, they're not shy about calling it that. But it's the kind of thing where, like, even, you have to have an incredible amount of disposable income, to pick up a Lego set. It's a model that sits on your shelf for $900. Anyway, doesn't make it any less cool. And if someone says, "Hey, do you want one?" Yes, I would say, sure, deliver it tomorrow. Like, I would gladly spend, some time building that. I quite enjoy that kind of stuff. But it's one of those things where just like, it's not even something I could consider for that kind of price. But
no,
it does have a lot of detail. There's a lot of like swiveling guns and the engines and the ports and the docking bay. And like, there's all these kind of things that just make me just so excited for the new Star Wars film coming out this Christmas. Like, I'm really looking forward to The Rise of Skywalker. It's kind of lit this, like, I'm done with all this dark stuff. Give me some Star Wars. Give me some, some sort of Hollywood, Christmas, blockbusters, something that's bright and adventurous or something, they're animated feature, like, what's that new, I can't remember what it's called now. It's the new fantasy one from Pixar. It's about like the fantasy world, but it's in the modern age. It's like unicorns are like pigeons. Like, I can't remember the name of it right now.
Oh, I don't remember. That sounds cool though. I haven't heard about that before.
Yeah, but it looks super fun. Like, it's bright and colorful, and like, obviously looks like a lot of laughs, and so that sort of thing is what I'm looking forward to in the film, and just not so much toys, but like just in the film industry in general. I'm looking for a brighter tomorrow. I want film and television to come back and be a little bit cooler. Like Disney
Mhm.
Plus. Opening coming out in November with the Mandalorian, the television series within the Star Wars universe. Granted,
Right.
I mean it might be a little on the dark side because it's about a bounty hunter, but it's still like the dark side of Star Wars is still pretty light and fluffy compared to some of the stuff that's on extended cable right now, or the
Yeah.
streaming services like Amazon and Netflix. Like, I mean, when Netflix and Amazon do dark, they do like nightmare
They
dark.
do dark.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's not a happy time. So.
No.
But anyway, we'll
No.
have links to all the stuff in the show notes, which you actually can find at thecitadelcafe.com. You can also drop us a line if you want to chime in on anything that we've talked about today. That's at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com. Find us by name on Twitter and Facebook. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod. Always want to give Kevin a shout out. And you can, of course, subscribe on iTunes, Android, Stitcher, and Spotify. But word of mouth is the best way to support the show. It's free. Just poke a friend in the arm and say, hey, Joel and Megan do a pretty good job. You should go listen to them. It's a lot of fun. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I am doing online at joelduggan.com. If you're interested in hiring me, just drop me a line there. I do a lot of illustration and design. I'm looking at doing some stuff at HalCon next month, so we'll be talking about more of that in the next few weeks. Should be
Yeah.
a lot of fun. Also, of course, I mentioned at the top of the show, I do another podcast about Minecraft, and that is called The Spawn Chunks. You can find that at thespawnchunks.com. And Minecon is happening in a couple of weeks, so we're going to be covering that both during and on the day, but then also after the fact on a podcast. So if that's something that's in your wheelhouse, keep an eye out on thespawnchunks.com for news and updates. Everything for me online is just my name. I'm going to point you towards Twitch, which is twitch.tv/Joel Duggan. Megan, where can people find you and all the cool stuff you're doing online?
People can find me online on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Megan Townsend. And if you want to follow my personal project, The Heir of Caldenan, that's HEIR, that's on Instagram too.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.